Welcome everybody. I'm John Burlett. I'm founder and CEO and Coastal Bend Opportunity Zone Fund. I've got my guest on here today, my cohort, Patrick Segru, who's a business law attorney based in Michigan, but he's here in Texas tonight. Tonight's presentation is going to be about the Texas Coastal Opportunity Zones, the hidden tax havens for real estate investors. Quick disclaimer, and I'm going to have to toggle back and forth to the waiting room. Okay. So again, I'm in Rockport, Texas. I have this quick disclaimer. Nothing is intended to be legal or tax advice tonight. The key points we're going to go over here are basically an overview on opportunity zones, the type of investments that qualify for opportunity zone incentives, the tax advantages of investing in OZs, the eligibility requirements for deploying eligible capital gains, and then we'll go over our project here based in Rockport. I'll introduce Patrick Segru. He's a securities attorney based in Michigan and also a national expert on the subject of opportunity zones. Turn it over to you, Patrick.
Thanks, John. Thanks for the opportunity to talk about opportunity zones in connection with your project, because it's, as you know, one of my favorites because of where it's located in coastal Texas. But if I may, for anybody on the call, we've got a really good workable group, small group, which I like when we're talking about opportunity zones. I always like to know from the group, does anybody, what's people's familiarity with opportunity zones, if you care to share that? Have you heard about them? Do you understand anything about them? Have you been to have you invested, or is this just your first exposure to them?
Very familiar.
Okay, is that Brent?
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, could you say again, please?
I'm very, very familiar.
Excellent. You got a great area in Tennessee for opportunities.
Yeah, there's a lot of good things going on here.
Yeah, so Bradley in from UK, but also Kentucky, next door to Texas. Do you have familiarity with opportunity zones and investments?
Yeah, a lot of our clients. So basically, we actually fund a lot of deals. I work for a company called Ascension Funding Group, so a lot of our clients are always dealing in these opportunity zones. Yeah.
Okay, so a lot of your clients that you're advising on are filing U.S. tax returns, apparently.
Yeah, so we actually access alternative funding for people who are wanting to invest in real estate. So, yeah, we're always looking at opportunities like this when they come through.
Okay. And Brent, real quick, what is your what line of business are you in, or interested in investing?
Really just for clients right now that are that have highly appreciated assets that are trying to take advantage of the tax incentive.
Okay, super. So with that level of familiarity, is there anybody else on the call that we haven't talked? Oh yeah, Cal, how are you, Cal?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you guys?
Great. Thanks for joining. Cal, where are you joining us from?
I'm joining from Dallas, Texas.
From Dallas, Texas. You're just up a little, a Southwest Airlines flight away from me in Houston here.
I'm from Houston. We moved here 9 years ago.
Yeah. Cal, are you familiar with opportunity zones? Have you made any investments? What are you interested in?
I'm not familiar with them at all. I'm just a new real estate investor, so I'm here to learn.
Excellent. So I'm going to spend the time that I have and kind of my role here in kicking off a little background before we talk about a really interesting project here in Texas, interestingly enough, John's project. And I would encourage Brent and Brad to pipe in with respect to your sort of areas of expertise and your practices about talking to investors and why people do things. I'm going to give a very general background, but we can make this interactive. And Cal, if you have any questions, feel free to jump in. And we'll just take it that way to build our foundation, and then talk about a granular project, and then hopefully open it up to more dialogue and questions, John, if that's okay, later on after. All right, super. So as Cal, when we started this whole thing about opportunity zones, it came about because of a study that was done ranging way back into about the 2012, 2014 era, where the Economic Innovation Group, EIG, was looking at wealth building and economic diversification in the United States, and they found that there's a lot of areas where wealth is not distributed as well as we'd like to see it, and that a whole lot of Americans are in economically distressed communities, and they started to measure it by census tracts. And so that's what sort of this whole study and EIG and their talent pool came together and worked with Congress to write this thing called the Opportunity Zone provisions of the Tax and Cut and Incentive Act of Tax Jobs and Incentive Act of 2017. So this came about in that tax act in the Trump administration. And John, roll through some slides here. Next slide. When they put this thing together in Congress, as well as the economic incentive groups, what they were trying to do is say, look, we have this issue of we need to incentivize wealth creation and economic development in these lower economic areas that have been sort of historically distressed. How can we do it without just spending a whole lot of the taxpayers' money from allocations from Congress? And so they created a really unique program in the Opportunity Zone program. And what it is it's an incentive through tax deferral and tax avoidance of certain taxes, provided that the taxpayer that is providing the capital invests in private projects that meet the qualifications. So it sets up great for areas that are looking to otherwise develop economically, metropolitan areas, cities, or whatever. And the Opportunity Zone tax incentives that we'll talk about in a minute, they're intended to be layered with all kinds of other federal, state, and local tax incentives that you can have connected to a project. But they're all focused in these opportunity zones, which are census tracts that meet the minimum threshold of sort of historically depressed economic performance. And they're in every state. They're in throughout the United States. Every state has many, many of them. They were nominated by the governors of the states or the state legislatures and then approved by the IRS. And they came out of analysis of the 2010 census tracts. And so that's what we're based on, which is an interesting thing because the legislation came about and started in 2018, and the program has been going since then. But we're working off census tracts and economic data in these census tracts from the 2010 census tract. So there's been a lot of talk about, well, some of these areas were sort of distressed in 2010, but they're kind of improving on their own because there's a lot of other tax incentives, state, local, federal, whatever going on. And, maybe we don't need this opportunity zone thing so much anymore. And here's a shot of Texas's opportunity zones. So there's discussion about whether to adjust those opportunity zones. We can talk about that in a minute. There's some pending legislation that would do that sort of over time. But right now, the opportunity zones are set like that national map that John showed. This is the Texas map. John, you could point out some key areas in Texas that are really interesting opportunity zones.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. For example, Houston has the largest concentration, the number of census tracts that were designated and certified by the IRS in 2018, followed by the Valley, the Rio Grande Valley. Interesting enough, right down here in this county, Cameron County, is the home of SpaceX in a city called Boca Chica, where Elon Musk has launched his SpaceX operation. And then more specifically along the coastline, where I decided to deploy my capital gains in this area called Rockport. The dynamics are very, very interesting, and I'll get into it a little bit more when we talk
Yeah.
about the project.
Why don't you go ahead and just share with us, because it's really important. Of all of these opportunity zones, what was interesting to you about this one? Because you were on a shopping trip for the right opportunity zone to make some investment in.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, when I sold my company in Austin in 2021, that resulted in a capital gain event. And I've been hearing bits and pieces about opportunity zones, but really didn't know much about it until I began a deep dive. I traveled 17 states in a motorhome looking at specific opportunity zone tracks, and then came through here twice. This county that I chose to deploy my gains and start this fund is a tourism community. The county, this is the county line to the south of called Aransas County. This is the county line to the north. This is an island over here called San Jose Island, the largest privately owned island in America, owned by the Bass Brothers out of Fort Worth. And that's all opportunity zones. But what's real interesting here is this next county between us and Corpus Christi. It's called San Patricio County. And there's a very small sliver of designated opportunity zone called Taft. And the reason is there's so many jobs here with the refineries. We've got the refineries down here in Corpus Christi. We have also jobs, a lot of energy sector coming in out of the Port of Corpus. But this area is tourism focused. And quite frankly, they don't want any kind of refineries here in this city of Rockport. It is a very established tourist destination for the beaches, for the fishing, and I'll go into more about that. But this is the county map showing the entire county, almost 85% of it. There's a little donut hole, we call it, in the middle where the city hall, the country club, the Key Allegro is not in opportunity zone, but the rest of the county is. I'll turn it back over to you, Patrick, and then we'll
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. The interesting thing, just to highlight a little bit about what you said, is the way the formula works for like 25% of the medium lower economic strata to make it eligible for an opportunity zone. Aransas County and the Rockport Fulton area meet that because a lot of the permanent residents are service workers. And so it's a lower income area for those permanent residents. And what you have, and John will get into this more, it's within 3 hour or less drive from major metropolitan areas. So there's a lot of people that have vacation and second homes there that are that carry a lot of wealth and bring a lot of wealth to the community. So it sets up for a robust entertainment and tourism area, even though it meets the definition of opportunity zones. So that sets up for an interesting economic development and investment because of the activity going on there, even though it does meet the definition of opportunity zones. So in opportunity zones, those of the guys on the call that are familiar with it, there are ancillary benefits to all kinds of stakeholders in real estate development and business. Real estate owners, obviously, business owners that own businesses that are opportunity zone businesses located in opportunity zones, buyers and sellers, the people looking for tax benefits, socially conscious people looking to develop areas that are economically distressed, and then developers like John looking obviously for tax benefits as part of their capital stack, higher values, and quite frankly, because the tax incentives have a waiting period, intentionally intended to keep people's money invested for a period of time to allow that economic development to continue. So for a developer like a real estate hospitality project like John's, it has patient equity. So it kind of satisfies something for all of these stakeholders in a community. Obviously, there's more of them here too. Lenders, financial advisors, whatever. So those of you who are familiar with opportunity zones understand that there's a lot of acronyms. QOZ, Qualified Opportunity Zones. Those are the census tracts with qualified. Qualified Opportunity Funds. Those are the vehicles that that capital comes into the fund and then gets deployed into the opportunity zone properties or businesses in order to take advantage of the tax consequences. Opportunity zone properties, those are located in the opportunity zones. Opportunity zone businesses, they meet the definitions in the code and regulations for what qualifies as an opportunity zone business. And then opportunity zone business property is the real estate, the equipment, the other stuff, physical and intangible stuff that is property that's actually located in the opportunity zone and held by an opportunity zone business. So in these investments, it's kind of hard for people not familiar with it. If you've done it, you get used to it, is that you start with gain. And this is how they crafted this incentive. They want to incentivize private capital to be invested in these areas by virtue of tax benefits. So they say wealthy people or people of means are going to generate capital gains from sales of businesses, sales of real estate, sales of art, sales of Bitcoin, whatever. And we want to take an incentive to get those people to take an amount of the investment equal to the gain that they would want to have tax benefits associated with and invest it in an opportunity zone investment. And so it all starts with a taxpayer that has a gain from an unrelated transaction. And unlike a 1031 exchange, for those of you investing in real estate or real estate investors, that a lot of folks that are professional investors in real estate kind of use the 1031, which is like-kind exchange. You can roll your gain from one property to another as long as you're doing it in investment or business real estate. You don't have to declare your gain. You can just roll it into the next property, assuming you follow the other rules and your leverage is right and all of that. And then you only pay your gain when you break that 1031, or if the taxpayer dissolves or dies or whatever, then it can get a step up in basis for estate planning. But this opportunity zone is like 1031 on steroids, because it doesn't have to be like-kind real estate. It can be a capital gain from literally anything that I mentioned above: sale of Bitcoin, sale of stock, sale of a business. And the amount of that gain then gets invested. If we can go back to that slide, John, gets invested in what's called a qualified opportunity fund. And again, that's the clearing vehicle to get the investment qualified for the opportunity zone tax benefits. And that fund can be either a professionally managed fund, where a professional fund manager that's experienced in investing in for passive investors in portfolio real estate projects, etc., can manage that money in a qualified opportunity fund, professionally managed. Or it could be your own, what we call self-directed qualified opportunity fund. If you happen to be the taxpayer, you sell your business, you know that your, let's say your son or daughter-in-law want to start a business, and it's a tech business, it's in an opportunity zone, and you want to fund it. Well, you can do that by setting up your own qualified opportunity fund, fund it in accordance with the rules, and then that opportunity fund will make the investment into the family members' tech business, real estate project, or whatever, assuming it qualifies. So that's kind of the 1, 2, 3 step of how opportunity zone investments work. Okay, now we can go, John. Again, you recognize gain from an unrelated transaction, sale of property to an unrelated person. You can't manufacture your own capital gain to get into an opportunity zone investment by doing a transaction with a related party. So it's got to be unrelated. And the key to that is it can't be more than 20% ownership in the transaction that generates the fundamental capital gain. Let's go ahead and skip ahead on some of this, John, because we got a lot of content in here. We can do hopefully we can make these slides available to the group. But so the 3 tax incentives that are available in an opportunity zone investment is, number 1, the amount of the gain. Let's say you do a transaction where in 2023 you sell your business and you have $1 million of gain that would be reportable in your 2023 tax return. Well, you can invest that in a qualifying investment through the qualified opportunity fund and then into opportunity zone business. You can do that and you get to defer your gain until the end of the tax year in 2026. And so in your 2027 April, or whenever you file your taxes in 2027, you're going to have to declare that gain that you deferred from the 2023 tax transaction, and it'll be reported on that tax return in the, whether it's long-term or short-term, based on what the transaction was in 2023, but it'll be at the tax rate for capital gain, long-term or short-term, that's applicable in 2026. So that's one of the sort of picking points of practitioners in the area, is like, wow, couldn't we get the lower of the tax rate in 2023 or 2026, whichever is lower? And the IRS has said so far, despite requests, no, we're not going to change it to do that. So it's whatever the tax rates are in 2026. The second part of the original legislation said, look, if you hold your, if you make an investment of a qualifying gain in an opportunity zone fund, in a qualifying investment, you will get a step up in basis, which results in a tax forgiveness of up to 15% of your deferred gain if you held that investment for 5 to 7 years. That's not applicable anymore, because the program is old enough now where nobody's going to hold an investment that is made in 2023 for 5 to 7 years before 2026 is over. So that's gone now. It was in the early years of the program. They are looking to extend that in the pending legislation. But the big thing, the thing that everybody is motivated by this tax incentive for, is the forgiveness of additional capital gains after a total of a 10-year holding period by making the original qualifying gain and tax deferral. And if the hold is for 10 years in the opportunity zone investment, then anything beyond what you pay taxes on in the 2026 tax year, any additional capital gain in that transaction is tax-free to the investor, and no recapture or depreciation. That's the big, as we call it, the big enchilada tax benefit.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that about the no recapture depreciation. That's a huge incentive.
Well, in real estate development, as the real estate investors and developers know, bonus depreciation and depreciation recapture are two edges of a sword. Accelerated depreciation gives you nice write-offs during the project, but then if it has to be recaptured on the exit transaction, then it turns capital gain into ordinary gain, which is not good. And the opportunity zone forgiveness provision on the long-term hold after a 10-year hold, it wipes away depreciation recapture. So to get into an opportunity zone investment, there's a lot of rules that apply. And again, we're not going to go through all of them, but there's time periods. You got to invest the amount of the gain from the unrelated transaction within an opportunity fund, qualified opportunity fund, within 180 days of the time you realize that gain. Or if you realize that gain through a K1 on a pass-through entity, you have a lot more time. You can go into the next tax year all the way up until 180 days from the time that LLC partnership pass-through or subchapter S has to file its tax return. So you're looking at September of the following year to make your qualifying investment in the QOF. Once the QOF, that's the opportunity fund, has your investment of the amount of the gain that you want to defer from that transaction, it also has 180 days to deploy it into what's called qualifying investments for the QOF, which are property or businesses that qualify as opportunity zone property or businesses. Go ahead, John. So again, here's the sequence. The investor that's looking to defer to access tax benefits to the OZ regime, they invest into the QOF. The QOF invests into a QOZB, which is either an operating business or a real estate holding company, that's a development company that's going to develop real estate. And then that opportunity zone business is going to own the business property, be it equipment, real estate, or whatever that is located in the opportunity zone. And there's reasons that the state of the art in practice is to use this formula, even though your QOF could actually own directly real estate, and there's nothing wrong with that. It could own equipment directly and operate a business, but because of the minutia rules that apply in the regulations, you have much more leeway in qualification of the transaction on an ongoing basis to make the QOF investments into a qualified opportunity zone business, QOZB, rather than directly into OZ business property. The asset tests are more forgiving. The time to deploy the capital before you have to look at what's called a non-qualified financial asset test are more forgiving. So this is the standard way that pretty much everybody uses to make opportunity zone investments. Okay, so
This here, and then I'll get into our coastal bend project after this slide.
you bet. So these are just, again, for those of you that can hopefully get access to this program. Here's some places where you can get some quick information, good information, comprehensive information about opportunity zones and the history of them, other sort of state and local type programs that might dovetail with it. And then Department of Treasury obviously have FAQs and whatnot at Department of Treasury Community Development Financial Institutions Fund is great. Novogradac is probably state of the art in terms of a CPA firm that is the highest and best knowledge base for opportunity zone questions. So thanks, John, and happy to answer technical questions if they come about after people get done swimming in your pool here.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. That was a lot of great information to share. A little bit of a review for some of y'all, but hopefully some important information that's very valuable. So our project is called the Blue City Paraiso. It's a mixed use, a boutique hotel, spa, a conference center. Again, 3 blocks from the bay. A little bit of my background real quick. I, again, had a financial planning firm in Austin, which I operated and sold in March of 21. And then I traveled, like I mentioned earlier, during COVID. So it was kind of a great time to stay in our own bed in our motorhome and look at these opportunity zone locations. I found a property here in Rockport. It was called the Oleander Courts. Was in the hotel district, 3 blocks from the bay and 9 blocks from the downtown art center and shopping center, and just less than a mile from the beach. Why Rockport? So let me tell you a little bit about this region. Nationally, Texas has got this thing going on called the Triangle: San Antonio, Dallas, and Houston. Huge economic impact. GDP is coming generated. We refer to this little triangle here in Rockport. We're down here 30 miles north of Corpus and 15 miles north of the most popular beach destination in Texas called Port Aransas, Port A. And we refer to the San Antonio, Austin, Houston as our triangle because it's less than a 3-hour drive. And San Antonio in particular is 2.5 hours, and San Antonio about 110 years ago had 4 daily passenger trains arriving daily from San Antonio to Rockport for the tourists. We had some very high-end hotels that no longer exist. This is our beach. It's very popular, sometimes 25,000, 30,000 guests, visitors, and it is very clean. This water is very shallow. One thing that's very important to know is, as far as the rivers flowing into this area, there's no rivers. There's very few creeks. The rivers are to the north of our county and to the south. So the bays, the estuaries coming in from the hill country and the rest of Texas is pretty clean to start with. And then there's this little bay. And then this land right here, I'd like to point out that this is owned by the Bass Brothers, probably the most prime real estate in Rockport. Been in their family, I'll get to that a little bit later, probably the island over 80 years. This land they've owned for about 25 years. So that's a little about why Rockport. Corpus Christi, for those of you who don't know, is the 6 quarters running the top exporter of oil and gas, setting records as far as amount of oil and gas being deployed out of the Port of Corpus. Again, Rockport is a top 5 coastal bend town in USA Today for 5 years running. absolutely the #1 fishing destination. In fact, there's population full-time 10,000 people here, and 7% of them make their living as professional fishing guides. Over 700 professional fishing guides. So here's what Rockport, some of the history. Hurricane Harvey made landfall here in August of 2017, destroyed 50% of the structures, and including our courthouse and our city hall. Both of them are under construction now, and the art center, which was completed earlier this year, and a little over $12.5 million art center with no debt. So it's a big art community. I get asked frequently, why would we build in a hurricane-prone location? And it's because there's a lot of demand for tourists. People want to be here. They don't want to fly all day and get hung up in Atlanta or DFW or Chicago O'Hare or JFK when they can drive 3 hours or less and come be at the beach here. So we're building with insulated concrete foam construction. We are this held the Economic Development Summit here. This is a professor at Texas A&M, totally unrelated to our project. He said about the pending recession, it's possible, but it won't be felt here in Rockport. This was a third-party feasibility study we had performed about building a upper scale boutique hotel at this location, and their findings were that would be a anticipated 16% target on equity, and at a cost of $258,000 per door. This is an overview. Our budget's now a little over 16 million. I'll get into that just a little bit. This next 2 slides really tells the story. This is 2% of the 15% of the hot tax that's collected when visitors come to Rockport and stay in our hotels. There's been no new inventory built since 2015 in the hospitality space. Hurricane Harvey made landfall in 2017. Again, this is 2% of the 15% that goes directly to the chamber, of which I was recently this year. I feel like I cracked through the good old boy system here. I've been appointed to this Tourism Development Council, part of the chamber. So I have access to all this data. The real revenue is about $3 million going to the city, the county, the whatever other entities get a part of the hotel occupancy tax. But look what happened when Hurricane Harvey made landfall. That revenue, of course, was way down. Our visitors was way down. But 2021, you can see it really rebounded amazingly well. And 2022, almost double what it was pre-Harvey. This year, we're tracking to be right at $1 million in the 2% of the hotel occupancy tax. The next chart, and I'm going to open this up for a little Q&A here in just about 5 more minutes. But this is the total revenue. This is dollars that went into the community from hotel occupancy. Same kind of general trend. And again, you can see almost $36 million in room spend for hotel rooms came in fiscal year 2022. Tell you just a little bit more about the project. We're 3 blocks from the bay. A lot of these homes, almost 80% of the community is second homeowners. And that kind of skewed the system, as Patrick referred to earlier. On the census tract, you had to be in the lowest 25% income census to be a designated opportunity zone. Well, in this case, with so many second homeowners who report their incomes in San Antonio, Austin, and Houston, and other parts of primarily Texas, some Oklahoma, that's where they report their incomes. So their income's not reported in the county, but these properties, almost all of these are totally rebuilt since Hurricane Harvey, and they're all $500,000 and up, second homes. Very few primary residents in here. Offering, I'll get into a little briefly on the offering. Is a 16 million approximately capital raise. We're going to be around 50% equity, 50% debt. We do have a term sheet from 2 lenders, including CPACE on the debt stack, and we're in the process of raising the rest of the equity component. We also have some potential managers lined up to operate the hotel. Again, we're going to have a full service restaurant, rooftop lounge, a high-end spa, not hair and nails. It's really about treatment, Bashay's. It's designed after a city in Morocco called Chefchaouen, also known as the Blue City. Thus is my background, and that's the whole concept, to do something really different, new, and upper scale for our visitors. The conference center, the town is pretty dead during the middle of the week because most of the visitors come on the weekends. So we feel like with the conference space, we've really juiced up our IRR by having some heads in beds and occupancy during the middle of the week with the conferences. And we feel like people will come from Austin, small, medium-sized companies hold their events here and have a half a day fishing or a day and a half fishing and a half a day meeting. This is our management team. I'll open it up now to those of you who may have some questions. Anybody, feel free to ask any questions of myself or Patrick at this point. No need to raise your hand, just blast. We covered a lot of ground, so I see a couple people had to jump off.
We
Anybody all have a
we didn't get a chance to say hello to Christopher, or find out where he's joining us from.
He's still on with us?
There he is.
Chris, introduce yourself, please.
Hey, how you doing out there? Yeah, hey, I like it. I like what's going on with the fund. I got in a little bit late, but I think I got the meat of the fund itself. It sounds like there's a lot of opportunity in this area for sure, for sure. I personally know the area. I know that there's a lot of potential for growth, and with everything going on, I'm in the San Antonio area.
Okay.
We travel to Austin, Houston, Dallas regularly and see everything that is growing. Myself, I've got a background in acquisition entrepreneurship. So that's what I do, is buy and sell businesses. This makes sense for me from a capital gains perspective, as well as understanding the opportunity of investing in one of these types of deals. So yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I don't really have any questions on it. It seems pretty straightforward. Seems like you've got a team lined out. It seems like you've got the location and everything mapped out. You've had a third party come in and give you a full rundown and you know on what you've got coming up. So our prospectus. So I mean, it sounds like you've got things going on here.
Well, thanks, Chris. We just connected recently and introduced the subject, and he's nearby in San Antonio. And I'm glad you're able to jump on this call and get a background on the, he hadn't really begun to learn much about opportunity zones. So hopefully you found this informational. Patrick's a national expert, and actually for the first time will be here in Rockport. I've known him now for over a year and a half, and he's helped in tremendous ways. He's on the didn't really tell much about your background, Patrick, but I'll let everybody know you're on the FINRA oversight committee for hearings involving in, you know, what issues fundraisers have or other. Well, tell us what you do with that respect, Patrick.
Yeah. So I'm a practicing but recovering attorney. I'm also an entrepreneur. My background is business finance. So I love financial transactions, structuring deals. I like alternative investments, always have. Done a lot of work in energy. So I spent a lot of time in Texas, be it oil and gas, fossil fuels, traditional energy, or renewables, which is big in Texas as well. I'm in Texas right now on an oil and gas matter here in Houston, which has allowed me to say, John, I'm cutting down there to see this beautiful area and talk about strategy and where we're at in the project. So yeah, so my job is on John's team to compliance on the security side and the opportunity zone side, and also just making sure that we have the right people in the deal for the right reasons, and to be available to investors if they do happen to be opportunity zone investors looking for the tax benefit. That if I can help answer some questions or help you and your tax advisor structure things properly, that's what I do. So, or if you're putting a fund together, happy to talk to your team about putting that fund together. to be able to participate in projects like John's. And I'll tell you what, when John's up and running, this is going to be a marquee project. It is. That's why the chamber is so excited to have John on their committee, because historically, and I'm going to see more of this as we see Rockport evolve now. It's been sort of mom and pop establishments, which has a lot of character and has given Rockport its character, and Fulton. But this town is up for bigger things, and the investment is there. Being close to San Antonio and the triangle that John talks about, the day trip, the staycation, right? That because of COVID, the staycation is huge. And so I think Rockport is a win-win, whether you're an opportunity zone investor or not.
Well, thanks so much, Patrick. You got your hand raised. Christopher, you got a question, comment?
Yes, you may have covered it, but I was wondering, what is the time frame that you're looking for to be funded? I mean, I know that you've got a development schedule, but when are you looking to do a full capital call, or on that? Like, what is the deadline? Now, the reason I ask, understand, I deal with a lot of people that are exiting businesses, and they come into these capital gains, and if this is something that you're in a 3 or 4 month window and we're about to close it, then I don't need to necessarily mention it to them 6 months from now. But this is something that I would like to know. What is the time frame that we're looking at?
Great question. We're currently in some conversations with potential JV partners or co-GP partners, as well as LP investors. Well, the minimum was 50,000 on the LP side. To answer your question, if all goes well, and the economy is certainly challenging right now, and we're a startup and a ground up development, so we decide to bring on a co-GP that can help us get to the finish line. The current status is we're about 50% along with our architectural, structural, and MEP drawings, and the site permit has been issued. To answer your question, I don't anticipate us being ready until Q2 or middle of next year to break ground.
Yeah. So at this point in time, I was just going to add to that. This kind of it's a big project. It involves people that understand hospitality. It's got a really cool concept that's attractive to some of the institutional potential JV partners for operations and to bring capital. But it is now open to LPs. People that understand the area, want to invest, have the capital gain. Again, you don't have to have the capital gain to invest in this, but it's available if you want to do an opportunity zone investment. But for the first 2 Qs, I think, Chris, you can count on the fact at a minimum where you're not going to be edged out by maybe an institutional JV partner. Because right now, I got to tell you, as we all know, because of the financial markets, everything's tough. The investment community has been thrown upside down because of interest rates. People are really looking at real estate development projects because of, and that's why John, I think, was very judicious, and he's always had his debt to equity structure at about 50-50, which in real estate development is relatively conservative. But right now, nobody wants to look at anything more highly leveraged than that for obvious reasons. The C-PACE component gives you long-term debt that is transferable with the property. So, and I'd like to say, because you predicted, John, that we were going to get into these interest rate environments, but I think you did some good risk management in how you structured your cap stack.
Yeah,
So yeah, we're Chris, and again, if you've got folks exiting businesses or whatnot and want to strategize with us, whether it's in our project or some other project, I think this is one to look at, but there's a lot of other ones out there too. We're happy to do that.
Sure. And, when I spoke with John earlier, that's one of the things, as a fund, I have a lot of small funds, very, very small funds, but they're usually short lived and they only handle a certain amount of investors. For a lot of this stuff, it's just beyond me. And I've never participated in them. However, there are a lot of people that I deal with that do. And it's nice to have looked somebody in the eye, even on camera, on a webinar or what happened to be, or a conference call or what have you, and know that it was a human being that you're dealing with. Anybody, I mean, if anybody out there like myself that is an investor that actively looks for good investments, we're bombarded with advertisements as well. And I have never seen an advertisement from you guys at all. John and I met through an entire different business organization and scheduled a call and started speaking. But that to me is something that I could recommend over the 1,000 other ads that I see, that look okay, but I don't know. This is somebody that's almost local. You're in our home state. You're only a few hours away. It's something that could be real to someone that lives here, and it makes sense to me. So
Yeah.
that's what I had to say about it.
Yeah, and it's interesting because some of the institutional folks or the potential JV co-GP partners are looking at the fact that John has not only selected this as where he's invested his gain, but he's boots on the ground. He's moved here. I mean, he's local now, so they love that feature. And rather than having somebody that's managing the thing out of San Jose or something, it's local management. So yeah,
Great point. Well, listen,
yeah.
we've gone just about our allotted time here. I want to thank y'all for joining us. Thank you, Patrick, for sharing and being on this call. And we're going to send this out to everybody upon request.
Thank you so much.
Hey,
Cal, if you have any questions, let us know as you start getting familiar with Opportunity Zone. There are no questions that are wrong. It's taken John and I, we've been in this space. We met about this space. It's taken us, 4 years to try to get our arms around some of this stuff. And so please reach out if there are any questions, Cal, as you start your journey.
Sure, I will do that. Thank you so much, guys. It's really interesting.
wonderful. I'm glad you enjoyed it. We'll talk soon.
Great to meet you.
All
Great
right.
to meet you, Chris.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.